Call the meeting of the Boothbay Selectmen to order. The first on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first public comment. Quiet. Life is good.
Excited.
Life is good.
Excited. Get going.
Next on the agenda, I don't know who this fellow is, but it's James D. Chaosis II. He's town manager.
That's right.
About TIFs, bonds, and the village improvement plan.
All right, and I'm experimenting with how I'm going to present. The selectmen have this in print in front of them, so I'm going to stand over this shoulder. We are experimenting with different ways to present information, so if this doesn't work, this won't be the way we do it forever. But the first thing that I wanted to point out, I brought up our website. I wanted to point out that we put up a special town meeting box where we originally had a nice picture of Boothbay here, and then we took it down for the comprehensive planning effort so we could put documents up there. It's kind of a staging ground. But now it's the special town meeting. All of the attached documents that we have out at the town office, the large binder over by Sherry, that stands out front. The village improvement plan, that stands out front. That's available for everybody to view. But we found out that there were more people that wanted to see this as fast as they possibly could. So now it's on the website. So if you need any information, go to the website. If you have any trouble with that, let me know. I can email this information to you individually.
What's the address? Could we, I know you're pretty good with that, doodle? Well, I think it's doodle.
Yeah.
How about putting a poll on there? What do you think of the traffic plan or something like that?
Absolutely. Yeah, we could do that.
You know, it's free, it's quick and easy, and if people are on the website after they look at all that, it's a quick little survey.
Sherry, could you put that in the minutes to do a survey? The town manager will do a survey.
And could you, so I can write down the email address?
The email address?
Not email, I'm sorry, website address?
It's www.townofboothbay.org.
Or.
So townofboothbay.org.
Okay.
It should be one of the top Google searches if you put in town of Boothbay. We worked pretty hard to get up high on the Google search engine.
You are.
So some of these slides that I'm going to present, you're going to see, but I think that now that the Register has done their article on the TIF, there's going to be more interest. So I've modified this a little bit, and we'll put every variation of every slideshow that I do from now on up on the website, so anybody could say, well, Jim said this once upon a time. Well, here you go. So the special town meeting is November 5th in, what's that?
Said 15th.
Yeah,
It's 25th, it's in today's date.
No, it says special town meeting November 15th.
Oh, you're right. So, I just came in from Boston, and I got here about 3 hours before the meeting and did this, so I apologize. But what's tax increment financing? We've talked about it a little bit, but it's a public economic development financing program, which essentially encapsulates new value and uses that new incremental value to create a funding engine. On here is one of our TIF districts, Watford and Downey. And why is the TIF used? It stimulates private sector investment and job creation for targeted industries and targeted locations. And it also creates a shelter against adverse adjustments to state subsidies and county taxes based on total valuation.
But it does not freeze the people's taxes.
It does not freeze. You'll see at the end of this slideshow, I'm going to get into some facts and fiction because I've heard all kinds of supposed facts, and we want to kind of get out in front of that. So it does not freeze anybody's taxes. It sets aside new value in one corner and old value in another. The old value is taxed the same way. It's always taxed. The tax rate times the value goes into the general fund. The new value is taxed the same way. It's the new value times the tax rate goes in a different fund. You're just splitting them up, still taxed the exact same way.
In Washburn and Downey and Hobson Job, was the same deal work with them? What happened to that money? Was that money set aside for the new value of what they were doing?
I'm going to get into that in just a minute. So our other TIF district is Hodgson Yachts. And interestingly enough, They were all done for very different reasons. So TIFs are very flexible. But the biggest thing that why you would consider TIF districts when you have an expected new value increase is for its sheltering capability. So with the new investment, your real estate value in the town goes up, and as a result, there's a whole bunch of things that use the value of the town in the calculation. Those are state education subsidy, municipal revenue sharing, and Lincoln County taxes. So your Lincoln County taxes go up because now your town is worth more. Your municipal revenue sharing and your state education subsidy go down because now you're worth more. So the TIF shelters this new value, puts it to the side and says to the state and Lincoln County, you can't use these in these equations until the TIF expires. And this is a 30-year TIF, so we're saying it's off limits for 30 years. And not just the new value that we know, but any new value in the TIF district is now sheltered and off limits. How does the TIF work? You draw the line. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. You draw the line around the area that you want to be the TIF district. And you essentially freeze the value in that district at the certain level. Everything above and beyond that set level that you knew it was a taxable value goes to a different pot. Still exists. It's really an administrative function. So then the town adopts what we call the development program, and you'll see it on file in front of the town office and on our website. It's pretty lengthy, but it says essentially it's a contract with the people of the town, the legislative body, saying this is what we'll do with the TIF district, and you can't do anything else. You have to get that permission with the people to do the development program. The approval process it seems a little simple when you put the boxes up here, but you'll find out in the next month or so that it's hard. You develop your TIF program by coming up with your district boundaries, your development program, and your financial plan. A lot of thought is put into creating a TIF district. And then you go to town meeting vote. And you have to ask municipal approval, the legislative body, to create this district. And then not only then, you have to bring it to DECD, and they have to approve it. The lawyer that we have creating our TIF program is very experienced with these things, already had preliminary conversations with DECD. We're very confident in all the aspects of the TIF program.
What's DECD?
Department of Economic and Community Development. Good question. Like we said before, Boothbay has 2 TIFs already. Hodgson Yachts TIF, and they're called TIF number 1 and TIF number 2, but we'll call them what they really are for tonight's purposes. Hodgson Yachts, it was enacted in 2000. It's a 20-year term and a 75% credit enhancement agreement. So in 2000, the selectmen sat down with the principals in Hodgson Yachts and said, let's try to structure something so that we can create some more jobs in Boothbay. Now, obviously, Hodgson Yachts has been here for a long time, so they had a really good relationship, and it was easy to sit down at the table and create the TIF district. Now, in it, there's a 75% credit enhancement agreement. I'm going to use these terms because the word TIF often gets confused with credit enhancement agreement. A credit enhancement agreement is literally a tax break. 75% of taxes are returned to the developer. Now that's often used when it makes sense. In the case of Hodgson Yachts, that's local jobs. If that's the make or break for Hodgson Yachts to create some local jobs in the shipbuilding industry, then the selectmen were probably pretty smart to have done that in 2000. Washburn and Doughty is TIF district number 2. Enacted in 2009, that's significant. What happened in 2008? The fire. So in order for Washburn and Doughty to build the building that they wanted to build and that they think they needed to do their work, there had to be some incentive. And the town stepped up in 2009, created a TIF district, 75% credit enhancement agreement for 20 years. They were able to create the building that they knew they would need for the future and keep those jobs here. So you can see these ones made perfect sense. So now we're talking about Boothbay Village and Industrial Park, TIF number 3. It's proposed in 2013. We've created it in the vision of a 30-year term, which this is a big construction of a document, so we've analyzed, does 20 years make sense? Does 25? Does 30? We ended up going with 30. There is no credit enhancement agreement. Remember what I said about the credit enhancement agreement, that's a tax break. There is no tax break with the developer.
So all the tax money that is sheltered that the town gets in number one and number two, those businesses get 3/4 of that back to enhance business.
Yes.
And TIF number three's proposal, all that money, none of it goes back to the business
That's
at
correct.
all, and it's left to the town to do what they want to do with it, which they all vote on.
How does the 75% credit enhancement agreement twice a year, when taxes are due, they're paid? After they're paid and received, the town gets a request from the developer and says, we would like this back. And per agreement, we return that money. So in this case, there's no return. It does not go back. It stays in the TIF fund.
All goes to the town.
So now you're starting to see some new slides. So I want to make sure everybody understands. The word on the street is that question 2 and 3 are the same exact thing, and that if you want to vote no, you vote no on both. If you want to vote yes, you vote yes on both. Absolutely not the case. Question 2 is the TIF. 1 is select the moderator. 2 is the TIF question. Very long, very confusing if you're going to read it at the polls. Please educate yourself before you get there. Questions 2 and 3 should be analyzed independently, and I'm going to explain why. Question 2 is the creation of that TIF district that creates the shelter of the new value, that designates the new revenue for public improvements, and without talking about the village improvement plan, it just designates that money for public improvements. And now within the TIF district, that alleviates some pressure for public improvements on the rest of the town, because all of this money is getting set for the TIF district. So let's say question 3 is not approved. You still have that funding available to do, I don't know, road improvement for Hardwick Road, for Country Club Road, for Back River Road. If it feeds the district, it's eligible. So you want to keep that in mind. I mean, the Industrial Park Road, it's in pretty bad shape. So that gives us a funding mechanism to take care of those things. So it's an important question, even if you don't like the village plan. Now, what are we talking about? Public improvements for the entire town. We're talking about roads, sidewalks, paths. You can make the case that if a goat walks down it, it's probably some kind of public improvement. I guess if it's a public goat. Now, also, you have the ability to do economic development within the entirety of the town. That's one of those things that's not locked into the district. DCD really loves economic development paid for by TIFs, because the people have already come up, they weighed their options, and they voted via town meeting. And this also is the trigger mechanisms for incentives for businesses to locate within the commercial district. The TIF district is really large. If you're in the TIF district, now you have the ability to get one of those credit enhancement agreements, those tax breaks, if you're within that district and you come to the selectmen. Now, people keep asking, what is going to be the criteria for a credit enhancement agreement? I haven't set that yet. But I think we'll probably have some public hearings to come up with what is going to be the critical elements involved in trying to figure out if you get a credit enhancement agreement or not. The one thing in the document, the development plan, is $500,000 new value. You got to bring $500,000 new value, or administratively it doesn't make any sense. The other things that I think the selectmen probably will look at is, would this have happened on its own, or because if you're going to put $500,000 new value in the TIF district and you were going to do it anyway, then why should we cut you a tax break? How many jobs or full-time equivalent jobs is that going to add to our town? I think those are the things that the selectmen are going to look at. I think we're all feeling a little bit of pinch when our tax rate went up this year. This is the selectmen's way of giving a push and saying, you locate your business in the area that we've already designated as our commercial areas and the places that we already have the support, the roads, to take care of your business. Now, if those businesses do show up and this credit enhancement agreement provides the push for people to locate there, it makes the TIF district stronger and gives us more money to do those public developments. You'll see I'm going to get into some things about water and sewer. Water and sewer is literally earmarked in the development plan. The selectmen don't plan on doing it, but they reserve the right to if the industrial park just blows up with new value. they can use that new value to create water and sewer. They can. They don't have that mechanism yet. Water and sewer is not the vote on November 5th.
Would it have to be voted on?
Yes, I mean, you're talking about lots of agreements with water
Right.
and water and sewer districts. Yeah, it would have to be voted on, it'd have to go to town meeting.
Okay.
But it's a much easier sell now when you say, we would like to take from this pocket of money that we already developed, that we already asked you for permission for, to pay for this other project that we have. So you're knocking down barriers. An old slide, the Boothbay Village and Industrial Park TIF is 272 acres. The original assessed value is nearly $16 million. Approximately $22 million in projected taxable investment is going to happen in the district that we know it's going to happen no matter what. So you're doubling the value of the district immediately. There is no guaranteed credit enhancement agreement, and there is a need to upgrade public infrastructure within the TIF. This is a representation of the TIF. It's not the official TIF. The official TIF is specific map and lots. But you can see this is the country club area. This is the village, the town office. We're grabbing that area. It's going up 27, it's grabbing the industrial park. Now the reason why we grab that is we know there's value going in there. We know we would like value in there. So you're able to use the money created by this new value to put in public infrastructure that might make new value there. The part that was really amazing to me is when we come up with the original assessed value was $16 million. This entire area is $16 million. The entire town of Boothbay is $974 million. This is a very inexpensive area of the town. There's not a lot of value. If we're going to beef up the value in the town of Boothbay, it was hopefully be in these areas, because the coastal areas are pretty maxed out value. When we're talking about value, why do we always talk about value? That's how taxes are assessed. The more value you have, the more taxes you pay. If you increase valuable area, it drives your tax rate down. Old slide again, authorized uses of TIF revenue, improvements to roads, sidewalks, parking areas in the district, construction of sewer, water lines, or related facility in the district. This is getting everybody. This is confusing people. They're saying they're building water and sewer. No, they're not. This is an allowable expense. That's all. Economic developer director or an economic development plan and studies. Once again, we don't really know what our plans are here, but it's an allowable expense. So if we want to do more economic development, we have a funding mechanism. Administrative expenses associated with the district. The district's not going to cost you anymore. It's paid for by itself. Everybody wants to see dollars and cents, and I fixed my typo. TIF revenue projections, the original assessed value, $15.6 million. The new value, almost $22 million, which creates $179,239 in new value goes in the TIF fund.
Per year.
Per year. 30 years, $4.7 million in the TIF fund. Question number 3 is the bond question. Now, the bond question is directly related to the village improvement plan. So that's, you can see I'm drawing that line in the sand. The TIF makes sense for these reasons. And then the bond and the village improvement plan makes sense for these reasons. They're very independent questions. The bond is specifically to implement the Boothbay improvement plan. And this is bothering a lot of people, I've already heard, is that the plan is still fluid. This plan makes a lot of sense, but it's by no means a solid plan. It's by no means the plan we're going to build. And we've talked informally with the selectmen about developing a committee to discuss the alteration of the plan. Let's get some people together and do a real community-focused view of the Boothbay Village Improvement Plan. Let's get a traffic expert in here and let's do it right, because we're not going to get another chance. Yes, sir.
Would that be just made up of Boothbay residents, or since other communities would be associated with that, will they be able to peek in on it?
It's up to the selectmen, but
Actually, our administrative code will not allow non-residents on a Boothbay committee.
Right, you're right, the administrative code does state that, but I think it makes sense that we have people at the table that bring the opinions that represent the region. But the selectmen need to figure that out.
Maybe not voting, but just some input.
I'm not opposed to that,
Yeah.
I know that we've run into that rub before.
It's a hurdle that we've
Maybe
run
ad
into.
hoc or something, or
That's correct.
Gee.
Yes, sir.
If you have taxes, if you pay taxes in Boothbay, would you be able to have something to say? If you own a piece of land in Boothbay.
I think
you
it's
pay
voting,
taxes in
isn't it?
The admin code says you have to be a voting resident of Boothbay. But I think that we've got to solve this hurdle, and there's some ways that we could do it. The selectmen need to take the initiative on how we do that. But my recommendation is when you're putting together the committee, you could have voted and non-voting members. But I think Boothbay Harbor needs to be there. I think that the business community needs to be there, and whether they have the business in Boothbay and are a voted member, that's complicated. I think we need to solve these issues, and we need to solve them soon.
We're the gateway, we realize we're the gateway for the harbor. Obviously, you're not gonna do something and not have them involved, that wouldn't make sense. You wanna make sure that you have, I think at
I
least-
can understand not voting, but it would be nice.
I think when it comes
I
time
was
for
just gonna
traffic
say,
flow,
we always seem to let Boothbay Harbor residents, speak their mind in these meetings. I don't see why it'd be any different than any other committee that we
Yeah.
put on.
And maybe
I mean that quite honestly.
Oh, yeah.
maybe it brings good vision to why we did that with the admin code, and maybe that's a future fix.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I know that's a hurdle we can't fix as quickly as we need to, but we need to get the voices to the table.
Okay.
The big one, why are we rushing this so fast? The TIF proceeds pay the bond 100%. That's why we're pushing this really fast. Now, I've heard skepticism on some people, and I just need to point out that we've analyzed the developer's plan improvements. We know what they want to build. We know how much it's going to cost them. We know how much we think it's going to be taxable. An independent appraiser went and looked at it. He verified his process with our assessor. That's pretty good.
So when you say TIF proceeds pay all the bonds, so if question 2 goes through and the TIF is approved, that sheltered increased revenue would pay the bond that's in number 3. So it would be no net cost.
100%.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
it looked like there's money left over in it.
Plus,
Well, there is, but after the 20-year mark.
But again, I think one big thing that's on there as well is, I've heard out on the street that people feel that we're shoving it down their throat. And one of the responses I've had to that is we have to put the bond question forward because on that same ballot, the same day, is the state bond question for all that was it the transportation bond,
$100
which
million.
we have to be in line for, because if we're not in line for that, if we don't have funding, we're not going to get the state money.
Yeah,
We have to have
you-
matching funds.
You need something to match.
Right.
$9 million of the $100 million transportation bond goes into a program that is geared for things like this. We want to be first in line and say we've already got permission from our voters, we're ready to go. And with DOT, the funding runs out fast. You have to be first or you get nothing. Now we've constructed the bond based on the new value. We know all of this information. We know what the new value is. We know how much it's going to create in TIF revenue. So we've created a bond that we think is safe. And we've added plenty of room for error. We've actually taken the value, the new taxable value that we know is going to be built, and we've cut it down 30%. It's actually 30%, when we're talking about $22 million, it's actually 30% higher. And then, not only that, but there's wiggle room if it ends up being that number, that safe number that's 30% less, there's still $1.2 million of proceeds that's wiggle room. And I don't think the selectmen are going to spend it before they know that bond is already safely paid. Some bond facts. The project costs are estimated to cost less than $2 million. We're going to target DOT Municipal Partnership Initiative funds and target Maine DECD public infrastructure funds. So this might cost us a whole lot less than we really think. Depends on how well we do with grant writing, depends on how well positioned we are. But we're going to request this $2.5 million bond from town meeting. It's going to be a 20-year term. The total cost of the bond, we're not trying to fool anybody, $3.5 million. It's gonna cost us that after interest. TIF revenues cover 100% of that plus $1.2 million. The town has no additional debt after fiscal year 2014. We have a 1999 bond that ends up being about $12,000 worth of debt service a year. That's gone after next year. The village improvement plan, hard copy just off to the left of that, and also on our website. We want everybody to understand that this is fluid. This is a really good plan, but does it fit us? We don't know yet. A traffic engineer says this is possible, so it's the first thing we would do. And this is just me boasting. Our TIF district it's unlike any other. We use the town of Cumberland as a kind of an example where they have a master TIF and they grab this huge amount of area. By law, a TIF can't be any bigger than 2% of the total acreage of the town. This TIF is 1.9, so it's really big. And then it gives the selectmen the ability to do those economic development purposes like attracting businesses or getting local business to invest in themselves. And that's what they want to do. They want either new business or they want local business to invest in themselves. You know, if it ends up being a kickback, I'm sure that's going to be completely transparent. And it's going to be for a purpose. It's going to be bringing local jobs, bringing new value that's going to pay new taxes in the future. So this is a great opportunity for the commercial areas of the town. Why? Okay, I'm a residential homeowner. Why do I care about the commercial aspects of the town? Well, the more they pay in taxes, the less you pay, and we're all in the same fishbowl. So the more value there is to those commercial businesses, the more it's going to balance. And everybody learned after 2008, we want a little bit of diversity. We don't ever want to be sacrificing ourselves because we're investing too much in one area. The TIF revenues pay for the infrastructure in the commercial area. I mean, how often do you get that opportunity to say, this is our commercial area, well, how do we boast it up and give the businesses the roads, the power lines, all the things that they need to be a business? Well, we have an opportunity here. The credit enhancement agreement, I can't state it enough. I think the business world is already thinking, how does this work for me? And we're going to work on that. We're going to explain that. Opportunity for economic development. I just came from Boston at the International City Managers Association. You couldn't have said economic development more times in the last 3 days than I just heard it. Every town's trying to figure out, how do I do economic development? How do I build my town's tax base even more? Because my taxpayers just felt the pressure over the last few years. We want to alleviate that as fast as we can. Well, now we have an opportunity here. A fun unknown facts, TIF funds can be transferred to other TIFs. We create this funding mechanism. What happens if something happens in East Boothbay where we have another TIF? Transfer some funds, come up with a repayment plan, and then it gives us flexibility. In worst case scenario, if we create the TIF district, we can always return the funds back to the general fund if we need to. I think you have to go through a process, but it is an option. All right, I'm a sports junkie. Everybody that's learned that it has gotten to know me has found out I'm a sports junkie. On one of my favorite shows, they do fact or fiction. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of fact or fiction. These are things that I've heard in the early goings of the TIF, and I'm going to tell you whether they're true or they're not true. So, is this fact or fiction? The town of Boothbay has voted twice not to expand water and sewer up Route 27 corridor. Why are the selectmen forcing the issue? So, that's absolutely fiction. It's interesting to hear. It just makes me realize that people have a really vague understanding of TIFs and engines like this. But the town isn't asking that right now. They've said that this is an allowable use that we could consider, but they're not even thinking about it at this time. Now, true motivations come out. Yeah, did we think about it? Sure did. Absolutely thought about water and sewer. The TIF district does not create enough value to pay for it, and the selectmen went with option B, which actually makes a lot more sense for this scenario. So, fact or fiction? There will not be enough business growth in the TIF district to make the revenues needed to pay the bond. The town will be on the hook. Okay, and I think I've explained these, but that is absolutely fiction. The new value by Boothbay Harbor Country Club alone is enough new value to pay for the bond. Any additional new value that may come up from some of these economic development tools is just icing on the cake. And we have tons of margin of error, which I just explained. $1.2 million is a lot of margin of error in order to make sure that we have enough new taxable value, which creates new taxes to pay for the bond. Fact or fiction, the town of Boothbay is on the hook for the $2.5 million bond. Well, that is absolutely fact. We are on the hook. We're leveraging our borrowing power in order to do this. The main bond bank doesn't care if we have a TIF district. They just want payment. So the town of Boothbay is on the hook. And there's risk. There's always risk. When you take out debt, there is always risk. But we feel the risk is small. We've done our homework. We feel like the risk is minimal. The town has no additional debt. If we're ever going to borrow, this is one of those opportunities to say this makes a lot of sense, because we can borrow, we can pay it off with the other hand. And debt is part of running an $8.5 million business, which we have here. Sometimes you have to leverage your debt for purchasing power in order to just get things done. I like this one. A tax break is for a billionaire, okay? Completely false. The Boothbay Harbor Country Club, Paul Coulombe, is not getting a tax break. There is no tax break built in here. The town of Boothbay is really taking advantage of his interest in our town in putting his money in here, and we're taking advantage of TIF district. We don't need his permission. We'd like to have it. We'd like to be a cooperating partner with our new business in town, but we don't need the permission of the developer in order to create a TIF district. Paul Coulombe is pulling the strings of the town. That's absolutely, no, I'm not going to say it's true. I'm not even kidding. It's false. It's absolutely false. The town approached Boothbay Harbor Country Club representatives to collaborate. We wanted to know what they're doing. How can we help? We understand you're going to do this huge project. We know you're going to have code enforcement issues. You're going to have permitting issues. How do we get ahead of those so we don't bump up against them in the future? They started sharing information with us. We built trust. We built a dialogue. We had conversations with selectmen and Paul Coulombe himself, and came in here and discussed these things. We built a lot of trust. And like I said again, we don't need the developer's consent to create the TIF district. We want to be cooperative with business, but for a TIF, you don't need his permission. The TIF, the bond, and the village improvement project was put together hastily without public input. This is too fast. Absolutely true. It was put together fast. The known variables to development, we just learned about some of these aspects really quickly. And we had to build some trust with the developer to learn more. And that took time. And we feel like we have a lot of trust with the developer now. We feel like they've shared a lot of information with the town. And now we're saying this is how we position ourselves to use this new information. Can we give all the information away that we know? Well, no, we can't give all that information away. But we can use it to position the town in a good position. And if we want to use this sheltering aspects of TIFs, we need to do it before April 1st, 2014. Because after April 1st, 2014, you have a new bar for where you set the level of the TIF. And if we wait, the bar will go higher, it'll go higher. We lose the ability to shelter more and more. So we do need to have to act fast. We want to take advantage of the November meeting, align everything up, the state questions with the local questions, and everything lined up. So we did put it together really fast. But once again, TIFs are complicated, and education in the community is necessary. And matter of fact, as soon as I sit down, I'll talk with the selectmen about this TIF education for the public piece that I put in front of them. Any other questions before I sit down? So in front of you guys is a memo for me. I wrote it up. If there's typos, I did it a couple hours ago. We need to put together a plan of attack on how to educate the public. And we could stand up here in front of everybody, but I think we're going to be preaching to the same audience every single time, and essentially that won't be effective.
Right.
And additionally, I've had people come into my office, and that's great. I want to inform people, but we don't want to backseat any town business. So I put together this memo, which I think could work. I would like you guys, if you like it, to formally accept this as an action plan, because I think there's going to be some skepticism if people are talking to me, they think I'm representing a yes vote on these issues. Now, honestly, you guys know I had a huge hand in sculpting the development plan and putting all this together, but I represent the community. If somebody that comes in and doesn't like the plan, I'm going to give them the same information as the person that likes the plan. And they need to know that the selectmen are pushing this information session. It's not Jim just gallivanting on his own. So in the memo, and you guys can stop me, I'm just talking so everybody knows what's in there, is I put some of the mandatory things that we have to do, post in the register. The development program has to be out front by tomorrow. It's already there, but and then we have our October 9th mandatory public hearing, but I filled in some space with some informational meetings that line up with selectmen meetings and open office hours. We might get imaginative where we hold those, maybe in some places that are a little bit different to get a different audience. But I think people need an explanation. In here, I also put establish the Village Improvement Committee. I think that go a long way to proving to the people that this is not set in stone and that it's very fluid. I've already talked to some people that I think would make good candidates, but we should talk about how we do that. And then a little to-do list. I'm working on a Q&A for materials that apply to people that are in the industrial park. I think those are going to be interested parties on investing their own dollars into the TIF district. I think the elected officials should do letters to the editor. Your words, not mine. I don't mind helping with those things. I've already talked with John vaguely about a public service announcement on Channel 7. We've already updated the website, as I've shown you. And then I'm going to go do the speaking arrangement with anybody that'll have me.
Ideally, it would be nice to get people, I've heard for the last 2 weeks, so many myths and half-truths. It's too bad that they wouldn't come. I don't know how you're going to get people to come out to these meetings, sort of hiring the sheriff's department and dragging them out. You just can't. All you can do is try to set them straight when they do talk to you. The first thing I've heard about this whole thing is, we don't need no damn Rotary. And I keep reiterating the fact to the people, that's a first cop. If you get the local folks together, if this all goes through and the local folk get together and say, you know what, that makes absolutely no sense, great. We're okay with that. This is strictly using, what was it, how long ago was the Route 27 corridor study done?
The original one, not the recent one that we just did, I think it was like 3.
So that, all this stuff is incorporating the Route 27 corridor study, as well as some improvements around the common and stuff, but that's all, none of that is new news to us. That's been recommended in the corridor study for over 10 years. It's just, and when we're still, I don't know if we supported the 27 corridor study 10 years ago, I wasn't here, but that doesn't mean we support a Rotary now. But we had to have something on paper to bring to the people. We've been talking about this for 2 months, privately, and we had to get something moving because we need to line up with the November bond package the state is putting out.
Well, it's going to be too bad if people stay in the shadows and remain negative because they're not educated on exactly what we're trying to do. This is a fantastic opportunity for the town of Boothbay.
What other venues are you looking to possibly have these informational meetings?
Well, I reached out to Boothbay Harbor. I'm about to reach out to Southport and Edgecombe. I figure they're pretty good platforms.
Yep.
Their elected officials can give us political support, which might influence people. But then there's the Chamber of Commerce, and I've kind of tried not to delve there. As being a director, I don't want to influence them.
What about like the Coastal Club and the Senior Spectrum?
Exactly.
I mean,
Those
that
are
would
the-
be,
Those are the groups I had in mind. I mean, we're talking about 5-week timeframe, so it's gonna be what can we get done from now. That's why I wanted to do it tonight in front of if you're looking for a speaker, for Rotary, for, any of Lions Club, then
Knights of Pythias, Masons, whatever.
I could eat up 15 minutes in a heartbeat. These guys can attest to that.
I'm kind of one of the old dogs, new tricks. Anybody that knows me outside of here is, I mean, I'm sure Robbie can attest, I hate change. I'll be the first to tell you, I will fight change tooth and nail. This, I love, I mean, from the moment this has been presented, I mean, change isn't necessarily bad if it's for the good of the town, and I see nothing but positive coming out of this. I mean, it's not driven by big bucks. We're just fortunate enough to have big bucks being spent in our town, so we can take advantage of it.
There's no agenda here.
Right.
This just makes good sense.
I just added, chicken scratched on that memo is to add a survey. Maybe one in conjunction with the town meeting vote. Maybe along the lines of Rotaries or,
Yeah, a good idea. So, I mean, what are you looking for here? I mean, if you're looking for support on the schedule or these public hearings, you certainly got mine, but I mean, what else are you looking for here?
No, I thought it would make sense if you formally adopted it in form of a motion as an action plan, because then I get to lean back and say, I'm doing this at the direction of the selectmen.
Towards the end of October, I almost wonder if we have selectmen's meetings Wednesday nights, but that doesn't necessarily always work for people that might have to work. Maybe we ought to try to have a special public hearing on a different night as we get closer to it, for all of us to be available, and even so much as not a public session, but a chance to take off the gloves and argue. I don't know.
Well, if I'm able to put together speaking sessions, I'm gonna probably look for you guys to try to, bring a selectman along. Because I think it means a lot more when they see the people that they elected in the trust positions to say, yeah, Jim's not making this up. But yeah, and that's why the open office hours, if you look at a calendar, they're like on a Monday, a Tuesday, or Friday. They're kind of all over the place. But I didn't want to imply that I could do that to the selectmen.
November 5th is on a Tuesday, correct?
Yes, November.
So why not have one more on November 4th? One final chance to ask questions.
Logistically, it might be complicated to do here because
Yeah,
we're going to set it for
they're gonna be
election.
setting up for the
But we
election.
could do it somewhere else. I mean, the town hall it might be cold. So November 4th?
I'm just thinking that that's one last chance for people that have questions.
Go to the fire station.
Yeah, we can always do the fire station. And I mean, I can figure those logistics out.
As far as establishing a committee, I mean, the people that are here every day, I mean, someone like Beth, what better person to have on that committee than someone like Beth that sees the traffic in this area and deals with the people in this area every freaking day of the summer?
Yeah,
She would
but
be perfect.
I agree, but that committee's gonna be diverse, cause.
I agree. I mean, but it's just someone like that, you've got to approach.
Yeah,
I spoke to Tom Nickerson, who lives down the
Yes.
street. I thought he was former selectman, he's gonna have good insight.
Yep.
And I said, would you be interested if they put it together? And he said he would be interested.
Yep.
You wanna have somebody that's been doing walking functions. Mike Tomko or Mary Neal or somebody like that's been doing those aspects.
You want public service, I mean, you want fire, ambulance,
Oh, I want
all
my
the
guys
people.
at the
Yeah,
table. I
you've
want
gotta have
Mike,
them included.
I want Dickie, I
Mhm.
want those, whether we have votes or not, I know we can't have a vote, but I wanna be there.
But that's down, that's,
and how are we gonna address this Boothbay Harbor? I mean, I'm all for getting other towns into this committee, but
if we
are
don't
we
call
gonna
it,
have?
don't call it a committee.
Ad hoc, no vote. Just input.
Yeah, I guess you wouldn't formally appoint them, you would give them a seat at the table, you can't appoint them. But, as long as, I think in those instances, as long as they know their voice means something, then what's it matter if they have an appointment or not?
Now I'm playing devil's advocate, just playing off what Steve just said. What happens if we don't actually make it an official committee? If it's a gathering of voices?
Yep.
I mean, is there any,
There's no language.
There's no
Committee's the language.
Right.
I don't know what else you would call it, but I mean, you gotta be able to call it something that you could get around.
A series of workshops. I don't know what else, but
I would say probably one of you needs to be like a chairman of whatever this is gonna be, and then leave it up to them
Yeah.
to figure it out.
I just don't think that it, I mean, as, after November, that's when we really, I mean, we gotta be thinking about it now, but I would love people to come in and be able to drop their names off at the town office if they're interested. That would be one thing that we ought to get out there now.
should we have this committee or group formed by the?
I don't know if I'd say formed, at least get interested people, and even if you have to go out and actually, once you get the interested people, if there's some people that we feel would be good on it, like I personally feel Bet would, and she doesn't come in and say, I'd love to do it, I think that, and then we go over there and buy a fish sandwich and say, hey Bet, by the way.
So is it,
I mean, I just think there's some people that really make sense, and then there's other people that we would never think of that will come in and we're gonna say, oh wow, that's a great idea too.
so, now, if I make this as a motion, what if you wanna add, is that one, you can change as you want to?
Yeah, I'm just gonna take this as my marching orders, and then we can always add to it.
Well, I'll make a motion, we adopt the schedule, for, I guess, just adopt the schedule.
For TIF education.
For TIF education.
I'll second the motion.
Any more discussion?
You can just see that I'm a little bit leery. We're gonna dedicate lots of time, and I just wanna make sure we're all on the same page.
Been saying all along, the only way this is really gonna be, it's gonna be smooth is to educate people, and if we gotta go out and knock on doors or find new venues to speak at, well, that's what we'll do, but I don't want anybody, I'll say this clearly, back to the camera, that we're not trying to force this down anybody's throat, we really do, I mean, as I said last time, when we started having these meetings, we all got more and more and more excited about what the possibilities this could really do for not only Boothbay, but the whole region as a whole, and to do it kind of tax-free. I mean, I don't see how there's any negative in any of this, so educate, educate, educate.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Thank you, gentlemen. There's a typo on the agenda, that's not 9-1, that's 9-11.
Next up is the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting, 9/11/2013.
So moved.
Second?
No typos?
Not that I found.
Steve's our word processor. He always catches a typo.
Well, either Chuck or I, one or the other, always find something. Usually.
All those in favor? Reports. Jim, it's not like you haven't spoken up. We'd like you to speak a little more.
Yes, sir. Special town meeting status, that's pretty easy. November 5th is the day of the special town meeting. Absentee ballots will be available as soon as the state gives them to us. They've been late the last couple of times around. We're not going to issue absentee ballots until we have the entire thing.
The towns are ready now.
Towns are ready. We're ready to go.
Okay.
Next on the list, goals and objectives. We keep setting it to the side. I'd actually,
I think
maybe
we
we
already
should-
gave you goals and objectives.
maybe we continue to set them to the side. But we do need to have a conversation before we do solid budgeting. I need to know where we're going next year. Comprehensive Planning Committee, I usually give you a tidbit. Did I give you a tidbit this time? I don't think I did. But the Comprehensive Planning Committee has been meeting on the opposite Mondays that we meet. They're making really good headway, except for we did give them a little slap on the wrist this last meeting and told them they're about 2 months behind. But they can make up time easier in some aspects than others. They're probably gearing up for a public meeting about land use goals here next. So the last one we did was a public meeting about vision. The next thing will be, here we come up with these land use goals. What do you think? So be prepared, be on the lookout for that. Abandoned vessel. The Cersei on just off Nickercane. Want to continue that dialogue. I gave you guys the harbor ordinance. We've had correspondence with Mr. McClellan. I also gave you an email from Chuck Fuller about his opinions on what can and cannot be done with that. You know, he gives us kind of 3 options if we were going to get rid of the vessel. But honestly, I could tell you that what we're going to do with it is as foggy as the first time
Can
we
I-
talked about it.
After speaking with Mr. McClellan, I mean, my opinion, and I can only speak for myself, I don't know what you folks, what you guys think, but he declares the vessel not to be abandoned. The Coast Guard don't find it to be a problem. I don't think it's our issue. I mean, as much as the people that ride across there, some like it, some don't, but unfortunately, we can't get in the habit of grabbing someone's boat and saying it's an eyesore, whether it's sunk or not. I mean, you could make that argument if you do it with it sunk, that you could do it, that there's one over there sitting that we don't like the looks of, the town could go in and clean it up. I just don't think it's a road we need to go down, and I just think we need to drop it. I don't know what you guys think, but that's my opinion.
Well, if it's not abandoned, we're dead in the water anyway.
By the letter of the law, it's not an abandoned vessel.
Mike?
What happens if this winter during a weather event, our that hull breaks away?
Again, it's not our problem, unfortunately, it isn't. We can't go in, I mean, if your dock was in disrepair, we can't go in and tell you, or fix it. We can't, the town can't go in and fix it.
According to the harbor ordinance, it's deemed dangerous.
But how could you deem that dangerous?
Well, if it started to break up or
Right.
something where it would be a problem, then we can
Yeah.
take care of it and build a owner, especially where it's not abandoned, there is an owner.
I just don't feel that it's a fight worth fighting. Kinda looks neat, especially on,
Well, I mean, until, like
You don't have
Dale
to look
said
at-
2
you don't
meetings
have to
ago,
look at
until
it-
it
you don't
does
have to look
become
at
a
it every- You
problem.
don't look at
Goes
it
under the
every
bridge.
day.
It would be better to handle it now, but it's not possible to
Right.
do that.
Yeah, right.
I mean, when I talking to Mr. McClellan, I mean, he actually stopped up, saw me, was it yesterday, I think? And, he had said that, you know, it's not abandoned, someday he might wanna float it and fix it. Now, I mean, we all know that that's probably unrealistic, but it's his prerogative to say that and do that, it's his boat. We've got no right to say any different.
We can't do anything until it is a problem,
Right.
is the bottom line.
Right.
As I said before, you set a very dangerous precedent. I mean,
Mhm.
we're a great way to get rid of the boat, bring it to Boothbay, let it sink, and
Sure.
let it clean it up.
Right, no, I agree.
I mean, I kinda laughed and joked the other day when I was talking to the, Boothbay Harbor Town manager. I just kinda said, well, we'll just drag it down the harbor and let you guys clean it up, because you guys had to develop an abandoned boat vessel
Yeah.
policy because you had one a year or two ago.
I agree with you totally. I mean, there's plenty of brand new boats that look worse than that one. So, I mean, I don't think it's our prerogative to judge whose boat's better looking and until it becomes an issue. If the thing's floating towards the bridge, issue.
Yep, we put this on the original agenda a few months ago because the
Yes.
staff didn't know what to do, and I appreciate the guidance.
At least, I mean, I'm glad to hear, I mean, I've heard all kinds of stories in the last, I mean, we all have for the last couple, 3 or 4 weeks about whether it's abandoned, not abandoned. He said this, and he actually came and saw me, and I mean, to be able to hear it from his mouth and to talk with him, I think, I mean, it solved all the questions. Agree with it or not, it's the way it is.
Right.
Not our problem yet.
Yeah, I think being the key word.
I mean, he says the Coast Guard has, he had to file with the Coast Guard several months ago now that there was no oil. I guess, I don't know if they came and inspected it or whether the Coast Guard out of Portland, I think he said. So it's been, I mean, it's all wood other than the top, which is steel. Other than that, it's wood.
See, my only concern is if somebody comes in and applies for a dock or floating stuff to put off on that piece of land, what's gonna happen then?
They have to move it. Well, it's a civil matter, really.
Yeah, but,
It's no different than when that bank came before us. What's the difference? We
Well,
told them at that point it was not our
Yeah.
problem, it was his boat. There is no difference.
but the town can say it's abandoned.
You have to go through a process.
Right.
Now you go through a process, the town can,
And if somebody challenged it, the
right.
process, I'm a little bit timid on whether we fit in the definition of the law.
Yeah.
I just, as much as you get some people saying they hate it, some people saying they like the looks of it. I just don't think it's a fight worth fighting, personally. I mean, if we felt that strongly about it, then a year ago when that bank came before us, we should have done something then, because there's no different.
Well, I made that motion, I remember that.
Yeah, and we all, but the rest of us four disagreed with you, and it sounds like we're disagreeing with you now.
Huh?
I remember that, you got out.
I'd say 3 hours.
I know.
I mean, it's just too bad we can't take care of it now, but I would say we can't without setting precedents or stepping in the bucket of,
It's a slippery slope you go down.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we could make the motion tomorrow, we don't like your pickup truck riding down the road, we declare it abandoned. What's the difference? I just don't think it's,
So the road commissioner actually has a lot more authority with abandoning trucks.
Yeah,
So
they-
if you just let me know.
They can come home, take a look and haul it off.
I just think it's a weak point, personally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
Right now it is.
Right, currently, I think you're right.
So don't park your boat in the road.
If you park a boat in the road, I can have
That's
that
an
thing
easy
towed
one.
in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna take that as consensus.
It's a
Drop.
dead issue.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
A couple of, these are just reports, I ought to be able to blow right through them. I went Thursday and Friday to the MMA strategic planning session. So as a newly appointed executive member of the MMA board, and I just want to report back how orderly and how impressive the Acton board is. They dealt with some pretty hard topics. One of which being normalizing the due structure for all MMA members. And it was impressive to see people from all over the state discussing in a civilized manner the pros and cons of different approaches. It was really good. It gave me a lot of respect for MMA as we go forward. The department heads are informed. They're in total control. But as I go to MMA meetings, I'm going to brief you guys on those, just so you know where we're investing our time. Then also the ICMA conference, which I just got back from a couple of hours ago. It was 4 days of tons of sessions. Sessions that I went to, just a few, the human side of collaboration, leadership and the new principles of influence, leading during a council crisis. I thought this was a neat title. Is this really best practice, or are you just practicing? And it was using analytics to figure out best practices. It was really interesting. Sustainability lessons from small towns and rural communities. Learned a lot about that one on how to create ditches and culverts in a fashion that is creating a sustainable environment. Collaboration across boundaries, civility in City Hall. I thought that was a great one. But and then I also went to one that was titled "Ideas That Worked." It was a rapid fire innovation where people sit down and talk about innovative things that they've done in small circles. But picked up a lot, and those are the official sessions. And I would tell you guys that the most valuable part is just being in rooms with managers from all over the country, all over the world, and then there was a huge contingency of managers that I already kind of knew from Maine, Massachusetts, because it just happened to be in Boston, made connections for future things, so it was really, really helpful. Any questions? Okay. Now, we didn't do a department head meeting, but I did touch base with all our departments. Really, the biggest thing to report is this code enforcement has been completely swamped. They're getting a huge rush. They've got, I think they had 4 to 6 on the last agenda for the planning board, and 4 more this meeting. So that's kind of a late season impact. And then just the ones that have CEO review, there's 6 in Dan's inbox at that current moment. And the planning board is already starting to work on review after November 5th, which I thought was pretty impressive. But we're still waiting on ballots from the state, and that's it.
Hey,
Thank you.
Going back up to the MMA just for a second, when you're on that executive committee, could you broach sometime in the coming year the whole voting structure, you know, I mean, we've always had concern, a year or so ago, about the way they choose their candidates, and I think that it should be up to the towns to vote on them, all of them, instead of them choosing the ones they're gonna vote for, which makes absolutely no sense to me. I mean, we were fortunate that they chose you this time, but I remember us putting your name forth a year or two ago, and you wasn't considered to even be put on a ballot. I mean, that makes no sense. The town should be able to choose whether you're worthy to be on that board.
Yep. And when I'm there, I'm representing the town of Boothbay.
Right.
So anytime you guys want something brought to MMA, I can do that. It goes for our neighboring towns too, Boothbay Harbor, Southport. If you have an issue that needs to be brought to MMA, let me know, I'll bring it. So that's all I have for reports.
Okay. No questions?
Nope.
Old business, standing committee vacancies.
So the group that we put together to do planning board interviews met twice, interviewed 6 candidates, and it came to some consensus. We asked the planning board to meet and discuss individually, and for everybody that was wondering what we were doing at 6:30, we were discussing the applicants. And really they had a hard time because they had 4 vacancies and 6 members that all could be planners. And it was pretty challenging. So the group has consensusly recommended Rosemary Beret, Andrew Morley, Linda Wilcox, and Chris Malloy for the 4 vacancies. And then we talked informally during the executive session that the 2 people that if those are not appointed as per the vote tonight, that we'd like to offer them other standing committees because Board of Assessment Review is still out there, and these are really good people. That's all I have.
There was also, I mean, you're on the planning board, so I guess this really would concern you. We discussed appointing full-time members versus alternates. The Board of Selectmen have always done that up until the last couple of years. It kind of fell by the wayside. And we felt that it made sense for the Board of Selectmen to do that. You know, so like, if we appoint Mike Tomaselli to the planning board, we're going to appoint you as a full member or an alternate member. There's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, it gives us the appointing power, but it also takes you, the planning board, off the hook, so to speak. I mean, if you had a member that was an alternate and you had a full-time position open up, and all of a sudden it was either you had to choose them because, you know what I mean, and you guys chose not to move that alternate member up. It makes you guys the heavy. Whereas this way, it makes us, we're the ones that choose that. I mean, obviously, we're not going to do it without talking to the planning board and get their input, but it gives the selectmen the ultimate authority, and it takes the pressure off from the people that's working with them.
We talked about that at our last meeting, and I guess, you know, one of the things that was brought up was you're gonna bring in 4 new planning board members, who in most cases right now would have very little experience in that role, whether you put them if you put them in as a member. And, you know, we kicked around the thought of, is there any way to go through an alternate rotation for a short period of time?
There is not. With the administrative code, you can't, unfortunately.
I just think, you know, how do you select somebody when you don't know what their thoughts are, and you don't know what they're capable of? That's a difficult decision to make.
It is. I don't argue that, but
When we were having this discussion earlier, a lot of it, to me, it comes down to if this was traditional way we've done it in the past, that's fine, but then all of a sudden for the past couple of years, we went non-traditional, and we've been doing it other ways. We've been making the appointments, and the planning board's been deciding whether they're alternate or a full-time member. I said earlier on, and I say it again now, I don't necessarily care either way, but if we're gonna go with this, we're gonna appoint full-time or alternate members, then we're gonna have to somehow etch this in stone, so we're not flipping back and forth, depending on the Board of Selectmen that are sitting up here, how are they gonna appoint? I want it to be consistent every time from here forward, wherever that is.
So you don't think the planning board should have the option of being able to determine which alternate has spent enough time and should be elevated to a planning board member?
I guess in a nutshell. I mean,
Why?
I mean, I said that kind of negatively, and I didn't mean it, but, I mean, in a nutshell, yeah, I guess you're right, in putting it that way. I think because you can flip that on the other side of it too, that, if I'm sitting there as an alternate, and for some reason, you don't feel I'm doing a good job, so when that full-time position comes open, and you choose not to select me, and I'm still on that board, you've got to face me every day. Whereas if we make that decision, you ain't gonna worry about it.
Go for it.
Well,
No, but you see what I'm
I think
saying?
the point is not to have it automatic.
Yeah, and it also, it keeps harmony on your board. We don't have a problem with being the deciding factors, but we don't have to work with them every day. You do. I think it makes more sense.
You might want to talk with some of the board members too, and just get their opinion on something.
Right.
The other thing we are saying is in-house, in the planning board, and their own, they can choose their own chair, their own vice chair, and so on and so forth. I have no interest in stepping on those kind of boundaries. But if we're gonna entertain talking to other planning board members, we can't really make any appointments tonight then, correct?
No, we have to. They're operating on a four-man board, we have to.
Yeah, yeah.
I think we worry about it later on, before we change it. We're looking at the administrative code in the coming months. We've obviously, it's gotta be corrected one way or the other, whether it happens this way or another way. Because right now, it is not clear. The administrative code just says that we appoint 5 full-time members and 2 alternates. It doesn't say how you appoint them, it just says this, you appoint them. So, it's gotta be clearer.
It sounds like at some point you need to review that administrative. code.
Exactly.
Right.
And we have an administrative code review committee that we can handily put that off to them.
Yeah, with comp plan and planning board turnover and things like this, we haven't really spent a lot of time on the admin code review committee. But they're ready, I think.
Okay.
I know Henry Rose says he's ready. Give him a task.
He'll be going to Florida again in a couple months, though.
Yeah.
And we don't take it as disrespect for the planning board whatsoever. That is not the intent at all. I just think that it makes more sense for us to be the bad guys instead of you guys.
I just struggle with how you can make an intelligent decision based on a single interview.
But you're gonna have to anyways. At your first meeting, no matter who we decide, if we put all 4 of them,
I know.
at your first meeting, you gotta make that
It's
same.
because of the administrative. code.
Right.
I hear you, yeah.
So all the intelligent decision that I'm gonna vote on tonight, because I wasn't part of any of them interviews, is I'm gonna rely on Douglas, Jim, Chucky, and Fran, and Alan Bellows with their recommendations, because
Yeah.
I can't in good conscience tell you, no, this person is a bad person, or, they're the ones that sit in on the interviews, I didn't.
Right.
So, all they can go by is their recommendation.
The only thing we're gonna do is just eliminate the automatic moving into a full-time member
Exactly.
from a alternate.
That's all we're doing. Anytime there's any discussion on the planning board, we're absolutely, first thing we're gonna do is get hold of the planning board.
You're right, talk to them.
But it also creates more communication between the boards, which I think we have kind of lacked in the past years. What's wrong with bringing in the vice chairman and the chairman of the planning board every 3, 4, 5, 6 months, whatever it is, just to have a conversation? I think that opens the lines of communication up more. I think we need to trust you folks just as well as you need to trust us.
And long story short, if we appoint badly, you'll know who to complain about. That's what I kinda took out of it.
Huh.
So we gotta have a motion to appoint these 4.
Yeah, I would say do the 1 year replacing Nels as a separate motion and do the,
I was gonna do both alternates separate and then both fulls together. So I'll make a motion to appoint Linda Wilcox, Chris Malloy, for the full-time positions. I was gonna say, let's do these individually.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion?
You said full-time.
Yes,
Yeah,
the full
three-
members.
it's
Full member
three-
position.
It's 3 years.
3 year.
For full members, it's 3 years.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Doug seconded that, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Now we have the alternate. You ought to do them separate because we have a 3-year and a 1
And
year.
the 1 year, I understand. So, I'll make another motion for Rosemary Barrett to fill the 3-year alternate position.
Second motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
And final motion for Andrew Morley to be appointed to the 1-year alternate position.
Second.
All those in favor?
You guys mind if I share a little insight?
Absolutely.
Discussion?
I wish you would.
The 2 members that will not be appointed interviewed very well. First, David Stimson, who's here tonight, did a really good job interviewing. And the inside information is that the concern is that with David's petition coming up, that people may question the motivation there. And that in another day and age, that David was gonna make a really good planner. And could have done it immediately, but why add question to a board that we need instant stability to? Also, Alex Rios here, he's not going to be appointed, shows incredible knowledge of the zoning ordinance, and shows up to every meeting, whether we want him here or not. But he kind of represents a cross-section that's already represented on the planning board, doing work with the Industrial Park Planning Committee, and then Mike Tomaselli kind of fits in that mold, and so does Fran McBrearty. And we didn't want the public to think that we've overloaded that kind of genre, that kind of section. But honestly, if there was 4 vacancies, I think those 2 people would be appointed tonight. If I spoke out of turn, let me know.
No.
No, not the least.
A quick question. Who was the panel that interviewed the applicants?
Douglas, Chuck, Jim, Alan Bellows, and Fran McBreedy.
And I really just kind of facilitated it.
We had set that, was it a month, 6 weeks ago?
Yeah.
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 It was a little
We had-
longer than we thought.
We had the vice chairman and the chairman of the planning board, and then we had Chuck and Douglas from the board of selectmen.
Didn't want to create quorums of either board.
Next up is new business, the CMP poll permits.
So there's 2 of them in your packet. We've gone out and taken a look at the locations of both of them, one being on Back River Road and the other being on Industrial Park Road. We don't have, staff doesn't have any issue with them, but they need to go through the gauntlet. And I know that, especially the Industrial Park one, that CMP got it to us really late, so they've been waiting for 2 weeks for you guys to review and approve. Back River?
I will entertain a motion to approve the poll permits.
I'll second it.
No, that'd be a
No,
so moved.
no. So yes, it's so moved.
Oh, so moved.
Yes.
Second.
No.
Is there any discussion?
I thought it was been
All those in favor?
I thought it was been listed.
Done.
Sign it.
Constitution Week resolution. Is this the email you had sent to me or call?
Yeah, so in your packets, there's some correspondence from the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution. They wanted us to designate the week of September 17th as Constitution Week. I talked to Steve and sent out an email to you guys and said, we're not gonna be able to do this before the 17th passes. So I did a resolution, signed my name, and now I'm asking for retroactive permission. But it seemed like a worthy endeavor.
So we're gonna, September 17th, this is
To the
gonna be,
23rd.
I would be looking for you to ratify my signature on the resolution.
So moved.
so moved.
Second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor? And then we have, next up, we have an Alma Fund application.
Oh,
Yeah, not on the agenda, but an application from Benjamin Dewey for $1,200. He wants to do a kind of a German exchange program swap. Seems like it's very fitting to the Ulmer Fund, so he gets my recommendation.
Same thing we did with the
Yeah.
Leighton kid, right, a couple
Right.
weeks ago.
Was that the exchange one
Yeah.
too?
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
exchange also.
Seems to be the worthy cause as we're trying
Same
to find
amount.
the
I think
identity.
it's the same amount and everything, so.
Yeah.
Do you have a motion?
Move we approve.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Good idea.
Do you have any more new business, Jim?
No.
Public comment?
If the TIF passes it, the November election, when would taxes start to accumulate for that, or go into that?
I think it backdates from April, correct?
I need to understand the question.
If the TIF passes in November, when do the taxes start accruing into that account?
The base date for you, are we talking about the base date of the original assessed value? So what date we're using for the
No, when would new funds start to collect?
same tax as everything else? It would be committed, you'd go by the April 1st date, you'd commit in July, it would be the same thing. So we wouldn't actually have any real funds in the TIF fund until first collection of taxes.
Which would be in August.
August.
August of next year.
Next year,
Yeah.
right.
And would that include new development on the golf course that's already taken place?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's why we want to do it now and not wait.
We would be using the assessed value as of April 1st, 2012, if we adopt it November 5th. If we were to wait until May town meeting of 2014, we'd be using 1 year later. So that's why we've accelerated everything to get the biggest bang for the buck, the most captured
We
value,
wouldn't capture as much of it.
2013.
2012.
2012.
So-
It's a year lagging.
Nothing that he's done so far is gonna be considered. It's gonna be as if no work has happened on the golf course at all.
Right.
We'd be able to predate it.
And if we wait until the May meeting, then
We'd
we'd
miss
miss out on the.
Everything.
On a whole
The
year's
driving, the
worth.
driving range and all that would be.
The driving range, which is
All the money
obviously
he
your
spent
value.
already.
But also, we miss out on a good chance of getting some of the $100 million transportation bond, if that passes too.
Yeah,
Well, we wouldn't miss out, we wouldn't get it.
Right,
It'd
so
be
everything's
long.
lining up,
Yeah.
that's why it's so
Yeah.
rushed.
Well,
That's
even-
why it seems so rushed, because you
Yeah.
gotta do this to line everything.
Yeah,
Even worse, you may get it and they might say, we'll fund it, but it'll be 3 years from now.
is it,
And then what do you do with that?
is it pretty rare that you get a business that comes in and puts this much money in and then isn't demanding a percentage back?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
That's,
Actually-
that's the unusual part of it.
Yeah.
Usually when a business is gonna put $20 to $30 million in, they before they make that announcement, they come to the town and they say, we would do it if you'd give us a break.
Right,
And that's not the case here. We didn't have that type of discussion.
right, pretty unique.
Yeah, right.
It's been very two-way throughout the whole process. Jim originally met with him, and then we kind of Dale and I got into it. And it's been a very mutual discussion all along. Nothing's been, hey, we need to do this. It's not been that way at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's not like we're dealing with a big, huge out-of-state or out-of-country corporation, but, you're dealing with somebody that
Right.
everything on the surface shows that he just really cares about this area, and he's excited about it, and I think sometimes it's hard for people to believe.
I agree.
It is hard to believe.
Yeah,
It's a little too good to be true.
yeah,
Just like this board of selectmen is not trying to steamroll this to the
Yeah.
public, I never ever at all felt steamrolled from the developer. Not at all. As a matter of fact, we approached him, so we could never actually say steamrolled anyway.
Right.
We actually went,
yeah, it's not even an out-of-state developer.
Another interesting point, I guess it doesn't hurt to bring this up now, but when we first sit down and talk with them folks, when we were the ones that recommended the TIF, they didn't even know what it was
Yeah.
when we first said, hey, we're thinking about a TIF district. And they came back and talked about doing a third matching thing, meaning the town would pay for a third of this project. Paul Cologne himself, or LLC, or whatever they call themselves, would pay for a third of it, and the state would pay for a third. So it'd be broken up into thirds. But along with that, the TIF would get a credit enhancement. It may not be 75%, but he would get a credit enhancement. which means the town wouldn't get anywhere near.
Right.
So then we suggested, hey, wait a minute, if we're gonna do that, why don't we do 50-50, 50% us, 50% state? We keep the whole TIF.
Yeah.
We make out at $1.2 million in 30 years
Yeah.
over that time, which we wouldn't even come close to if we did third, and third.
Right.
And they said, you know, if you'd be willing to do that, we would ask for no TIF.
Right. No, no.
I mean, that's a win-win.
Right, no enhancement.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a win-win for us.
I get it.
We're trying to get the developers permission to do some informational meetings on what they plan on doing too. We've told them that the hardest sell here is that we know more information than we're allowed to tell the public about what they are gonna do on their private property. But that would bridge some of the trust here, is if they could demonstrate that, and we'll work on that conversation. But you gotta remember, they're also on a timeline like we are, putting everything together really fast. They don't wanna promise anything to the community that they don't think they can ever
Right.
do.
Oh, yeah.
So, they're running their business, we're running our business, but we're working on that conversation. And I think we'll get some cooperation with the developer in the future on what they can tell us.
I will entertain a motion to review the warrants and sign them upon review.
So moved.
Second it.
All those in favor?
There we go.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second it.
All those in favor? Wonderful.